Welcome to Across the Meadows, a podcast where I, Ana Maria Del Fiorentino, invite you to listen to Cambridge scholars and friends as they share their educational journeys and their sense of belonging, both at the University of Cambridge and in the wider world. These conversations take place in the beautiful Grantchester Meadows, a space of inspiration and deep personal meaning for me, and one cherished by some of my favorite thinkers, including Virginia Woolf, Joan Maynard Keynes, Bertrand Russell, and Rupert Brooke, along with many others, past and present. This is the very first episode of Across the Meadows, and I'm delighted to begin with my first guest, a dear friend and fellow PhD candidate from the Faculty of Education, soon to be Dr. Heidy Pérez-Cordero. We have Heidy here today, my colleague and friend from the Faculty of Education at the University of Cambridge, and I will start with the questions I always do to participants, which is who are you? Where you come from?
So I'm originally from Puerto Rico, but my dad is from the Dominican Republic. It's like the next island next to Puerto Rico in the Caribbean. So yes, I come from a mother who she's a teacher and social worker, and my dad is a butcher. So, but I grew up with my single mother.
Mm-hmm. Lovely. And we can talk a bit about your PhD research as well, if you just recently submitted. So I'm not sure, it's a joyful theme, but I would like to know more about your work. What is your research about?
So my research, I work with heritage language teachers. What I mean by heritage language teachers are teachers who teach their mother tongue that is not English. People who are immigrants in this country, in England. And some of them, they did not prepare formally as language teachers. Or some of them, if they are language teachers, it's not like the teachers of their mother tongue. And they came here with, some of them with, their own academic degrees, master degrees even. People from journalism, people from even English teachers, people from business. When they came to this country, and they started to be in the labor market to look for a job, they were not able to find a job within their profession. Why? Because their credentials were not valid. Because they will give highly importance that you have work experience in this country. And some of them as English teachers, they will not seen as English teachers. One of them, she told me when she got here in the 90s, she got told that she cannot teach English because she was not a native English speaker, for example. So I look into the ethnic penalties. I look into their resilience process in the labor market. And it's a way that we explore the identity of these teachers to see how they got there. Because most of the literature that you have, an exploration within this research in heritage languages, is concentrated in the learners or the community in general, and the struggles in general as a volunteers to come together and build a legacy for the next generation within their culture through language. But it's how they got there. So that's what I'm interested in.
I see. Is that your trajectory as well? That's how you came to this country?
Yeah. So I call myself an accidental heritage language teacher. And at the beginning of my research, I start using the term and using the lens and the epistemology of accident, and I explained that, how the term accident is linked to identity, because Aristotle will talk about, like how, the essence of the human being and the substance, and how sometimes through accidents you reveal your true essence. So you have a lot of philosophy behind this. But yes, so I call myself that, but then when I got to my research, understanding the heritage language teacher identity, then I dropped the term accident. But yes, I my bachelor degree, my undergrad degree is a drama teacher from a Spanish-speaking country in Puerto Rico. Then when I moved to the U.S., that I have, Puerto Rico is a colony of the U.S., as they call it, a territory of the U.S. And when I had everything, like I prepared everything, I have my certificate. When I moved to the Midwest of the U.S., they said like, yeah, but you don't have the teacher's license from this state. And this is something that happens in the U.S. Even teachers from California or other states cannot go and work in other states. And they may have to go through a year of training in another state. Oh. The thing is, I didn't have the money to pay for a certificate and study 1 year of things I already learned about. And I was practicing them. So I became an accidental preschool teacher because I didn't study for early childhood. And eventually I became an accidental teacher of one discipline and the other. And my first accidental language job was as an English teacher of like early childhood. And eventually I was hired as a Spanish language private teacher. And then keeps the journey. And then when I moved to this country, it happened again. So it's like, so I point out in my research about this phenomenon in the Anglophone countries. Now, it's very common that it happens within the countries of the UK, in Australia, in Canada, in the US.
I see. And how did you ended up coming to Cambridge University in particular? You moved to England?
So I moved to England. My husband was done with his PhD. He was looking for a postdoc. And I really wanted to experience other country that was not in the US because we lived there almost 8-9 years. And finding a position for him, it was the break to move to another country. So when I came here to do homeschool to my children, But then my neighbors started asking me, we were living within the university accommodation. And they started asking me, what you used to do before. And then I was hesitant to share the information because I knew people would ask me to teach their children. And I came from the US having 3 jobs. So I really needed a break. Right? And just to concentrate, to get my children used to the new community and all. And my neighbors hired me as a Spanish language teacher. So I started with 2 students. They have a third one. And from that on, started here in the UK, and eventually I got to the Spanish heritage language here in Cambridge. And I had the opportunity to be a teacher, a drama teacher there, a dance teacher, and then I became one of their administrators.
I see. I know you're right saying it's not an accident. It sounds like inevitable. You like...
Yeah.
Almost a certainty that you ended up going to do this language teaching when you are moving around like you did.
Yeah. The way I describe accident is more like this unexpected event because I didn't plan. When I came to England, I was like, we're going to do homeschool 4 years, go away, so we can explore, world history, among others. But then, that happened.
Then after happening times over times, you just feel like it's inevitable in a way, like people will ask you to do this.
If you give me a task, I really like to do my job very good. So if I also see a need within a community, I feel a call. And if I don't know something, I will search. So I think that's the research part of me. Is this link with the community and to build community with people?
And your own identity, you say as well, for being a heritage language, or?
I think what brings me to this connection to build community is being an immigrant. Because this is a second, even when Puerto Rico is a territorial colony of the US, the way we get treated in the US is a second-class citizen. We are born citizens of the US, but how we're treated there is like you are not part of the nation, right? So my first experience as an immigrant was in the US. My second experience was here, and you start feeling, you start questioning if you belong or not, and you're trying to do things to start feeling that you belong. So I think that call to build community is my way to find a way to belong to that space.
As an immigrant in a country that is not necessarily friendly. All right. And you moved around quite a bit. I remember you mentioning working with Boal, the famous theater practitioner from Brazil, who got the idea of the theater of the oppressed based on Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed. How, if you can tell us a bit about how was your experience, because this is very, very special. Like not many people can say that you worked together with him. So how was he and how was the work? And
so I feel like sometimes like a cat. I have many lives. So in that life that is connected to this one, so I was an undergrad student in Puerto Rico doing my bachelor degree, and by that time it was by the end of my undergrad degree, and I was a teacher in Puerto Rico. A middle school teacher, a secondary school teacher. So I had students from 11 years old to 14. And I was doing my practicum, is when everything that you learn in uni to become a teacher, you do it in a whole semester in 6 months. So I had to teach them skills to do drama. And then we have to put together a production. In that process, I encountered many challenges because I was not able to connect with my students. It was a community that they had many challenges. The students were exposed to a lot of violence. And everything that I presented to them, it was a drama. You're thinking about, I was not to the level of Shakespeare, but I was bringing in literature from what I thought will connect with them. And more to the Puerto Rican and the immigrant connection. But even they will not connect with that. And I try many ways to do it until I remember talking to these colleagues saying like, this is not working. I don't know what I'm going to do because I really would like to do something with them. And I recognized at that time that they were exposed to a lot of violence. That was something that I was able to observe. And she recommended me, what about if you buy Dr. Rosa Luisa Marquez's book? She has this book because I did already. I went to South America with Rosa Luisa Marquez to help her with. I was part of the production. She had this play and they were presenting in Ecuador, and I was there as one of the people from production. And to support all the actors and all the performers. And we also have, studied that summer there in Ecuador. So I just know him to that extent, to be a support role within the production. But I didn't know her like part of an educator in that sense. And she has a book, Dramatic Activities, that you can apply even in schools. Okay. And then in the book, there were photos of Boal. I was like, I didn't know who was Boal. And eventually, I read the book and I tried the way I understood the work of Rosa Luisa, that she was a very good friend of Boal, that even they worked together. I tried to put that into practice. And it was very successful. I had students open it up for me, even students who felt comfortable to tell me at the end of a session, like they were living violence at home, And through that work, through drama, doing drama exercises for education, I was able to get help for my students. And there are many stories about that experience, but then I engaged with Rosa Luisa's work, and she was offering courses within the university, and I took all those courses. And the culminating experience, after I think might be 1 or 2 years working with her, it was to go and meet Boal. And he will teach us, you're going to go to the Centro de Teatro Oprimido, the Center of the Theater of Oppressed, and Boal and his team will teach us. So that was in 2007. So 2 years before he passed. So I was very lucky for that experience. And that's how I became. But when we went to Brazil, we went with our own play of Theater of Oppressed to present it there to the person who created it. So it was very interesting and kind of nervous experience for that. And we were able to perform in 3 languages. Wow. So they gave us a crash course of Portuguese in 2 weeks to learn the basics. So we were able to do acting in Portuguese English and Spanish, because they receive people at the center of the theater of the oppressed, from different parts of the world. And it's interactive theater, so at a certain time we are acting, presenting the problem, we will stop, and someone from the audience will join to trying to find a solution to the problem presented. So if someone comes in and it's in English, then we need to change the language right away. So it's a multilingual experience. I think it was the first multilingual experience I had through drama. So that's my experience with Boal. And I remember that at the time I didn't drink beer. And the first night we were there, Boal, there was a bar across, like a bar and kind of cafeteria across the Theater of the Oppressed. And Boal went there to have his dinner. And it's like, when you're done with your last class, come and join us, the group. We went to join Boal. And Boal is like, beer for everyone. And I drank the beer because it was Boal.
Of course, yes.
So
it's a special beer.
Yes. So I have great memories. I'm super thankful of Dr. Rosalisa Marquez, because she was the one exposing, for her, it was her friend,
Yeah.
It was the person that she met along in life to do theater together in France and other countries. For us, it was a rock star, but very humble people, and being able to not just meet him, but meet his family and see his legacy through his family as well, especially his son, Julian Boal as well. I have the privilege to meet him as well. I feel I'm part of a piece of history of applied drama, if you can tell.
Yeah, wow, this is lovely. And you ended up bringing a bit of all those things to Cambridge with you, right? In your research.
Yes, because my research is what they call applied drama. So applied drama is when you use drama or theater for different purposes, like for social justice, for education, and theater of the press is part of that realm of applied drama. So yes, I've been doing drama since I was a teenager, up now to my young years as a PhD student.
So do you bring Boal to your framework? Is he's one of the most important people in your work, or no? It's just...
So I use Boal. So he has, his model is a tree. See, it's a tree here. So the trunk of the tree in Boal's theater of the oppressed are the games. It's how you explore different things without theater through the games, and that is the part of the trunk of the tree that I use. The branches are the different styles: invisible theater, forum theater. Yes, so I concentrate on the games because what I do is I study about identity, and I study about theater games, and then I modify those theater games so they can collect data about identity specific, or how you start developing your identities. And other games, I was able to create them by myself based on these two information of games from Boal that many people been developing as well, because this is within the theater and drama community, that's what you do. You learn from someone and then you start adapting to your own community or needs. So, yeah.
Who do you think were the most inspirational people in your research, in your academic work, besides Boal, or people perhaps you learn about them here in Cambridge, or people you met at the Faculty of Education?
I mean, I'll say there are a couple of things. So this one is motivation, inspiration. So I'll say, my main inspiration are the heritage language teachers, because most of the research I read about, it was from the lens of a researcher. You will read the papers and you cannot hear the teachers' voices. So because I was still a heritage language teacher, so I feel they need to hear the teachers' voices, and the way you express those words, they know, this not because you're reading a lot of research and you're doing field work, it's because you've been embodying this role. So I think they are my main inspiration. But if I have to choose from, for example, the theater world, I say Rosa Luisa Marquez because she was the one who taught me about Boal and other people within drama, and it came from this very practice-based work. And yes, I'll say that from drama, like Rosa Luisa, of course Boal. Freire is a great influence for me as well because my role as a teacher is based on democratic, teaching and learning process where I honor my students, experience, and we all are giving something into the process. I'm not the absolute knower, right? I'm not the expert. We listen to each other. So that's my stand within Freire. And I'll say from the identity work, I'll go to the base of Erik Erikson, that is more into a psychological part of it, more to understand, how we develop psychologically and how we relate to our surroundings.
Lovely. And you do this community work in Cambridge as well, as far as I know. You are always kind of bridging this academic experience with the local communities.
Yeah, so before I started my PhD, I was working with a local charity here for offering services to minority ethnic people and a lot of immigrant people.
In Cambridge?
In Cambridge specific. So yes, that's the way I know people from different community groups here in Cambridge. But I got to that charity thanks to the Spanish language school here, the community organized language school that is run by volunteers as all of the heritage language schools here. And that's because, they are an umbrella organization that is a non-profit, and they gather them. So we meet a couple of times of the year. So that's the reason that we know each other. But here in Cambridge, they have many of these schools. You have around in Cambridgeshire, you have around, and it fluctuates because of the mobility of people in this area, but you might have around 33 schools and growing of different languages.
Yeah, and considering you've been living in the US and here, and you've been to Brazil and to many other places, Puerto Rico, and how do you see Cambridge different or similar to those places? Based on your experience, but also in the connection between the university and the local communities from what you gathered living in the US and other places when you did your undergrads, or I don't know if you're already kind of observing those things at the time, but...
Yeah, and because it was in different times, right? Because I was in as an undergrad back home in Puerto Rico in the 2000s, early 2000s, very different from now in 2025 here.
Yeah.
But I think the connection with the community, with universities, is always a challenge because even back home, I remember, the sense of the university taking over the small town of Rio Piedras that is in Puerto Rico, and how, the benefits of that is that there were more local restaurants and cafeterias for students, and then that way it will be prolific, the financial growth of the area. But then how you integrate the local community with university, always a challenge. The University of Puerto Rico, they have their own theater, which is very famous. So when they have free concerts, that's an opportunity for the community to come in. But the thing is, if you get out the information to people to come in the university, and even here in Puerto Rico, different from the US, at least I used to live in the state of Wisconsin, you don't have there, at least that particular university, you don't have fences. In Puerto Rico, you have fences in the university, and that's a message that you're sending, right? As well, and they have security guards to ask you where you're coming in Puerto Rico, and things like that. I think they're making efforts, as using the theater to have concerts and people coming in free of cost. But in that term, I see more your question through my students, because when I used to be a teacher in Puerto Rico, I remember I I asked my students if they can come to the university to present a scene of the play that we were putting together, because the play, it was something that they were writing along the way. And it was about violence. And they were so proud of their work that they got invited by my professor to university, by Dr. Victoria Espinosa. And when I offered them, we'd like to go to university, some of them like, university? No, why? I was like, we were starting exploring the topic about them thinking about going to university in the future to study there. Their answer was, that's for rich people. I was like, I'm not rich. I get money from the government to be able to study there. So that was the sense in that 2006 that the university was for rich people, for my student in that area of the island. Mm-hmm. And so exposing them to the university, I needed to make the effort for that. So in that sense, the university felt like a closed space. In the U.S., I was surprised. I mean, the U.S., every place is very different, but where I was living, there were no fences, so it felt more open for people to come in and have the space. I remember they opened, when I was there, they opened this center, like this kind of discovery center, and they will do a lot of outreach programs. That was around 2008 to 2014. So in that sense, I felt that university was more open to the community than my university back in Puerto Rico. Of course, different times in history.
Yeah.
In here, there is, because also, reaching out to my experience of working with charities here and being more exposed to people who live here, that they're not associated with the university, adds a layer to the answer of this question. Because yes, here you have the opportunity from, here you don't have only University of Cambridge, you have other universities here as well. And in general, with Anglia Ruskin University and other universities around, they have open days that you can go and interact, that may have free events as well. But in terms of the culture of having universities with colleges, it adds a layer of elitism, because it's the kind of activities and events you hold, like having formal dinners, for example, and having a dress code for that, and having the gowns to it, right?
Or the May balls.
Yes. So it's the way we, I will say, embody again, how we embody the academic work of this community. And I know people, traditions are treasured, but also I think about that sometimes we need, at this point in history, we have to start questioning traditions as well, and what is valuable to keep, and what in others, you don't necessarily have to get rid of it, but maybe you can be more flexible.
Yes.
To see what message you would like to send to the population. Right? I mean, it happens here in Cambridge, happens what happens in other college cities or university cities. That is a lot of gentrification. Then the different universities start building more and more because they have more accommodation for their students. They need more businesses to cater their students. They just pushing away to the margins the local people. So I think it's not just a Cambridge problem, it's a university, city or village problem. I think it's worldwide in that term of that.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. And you are the first generation in your family to go to university, or your parents been to university as well?
So I have different story for each side. My grandmother, from my mother's side, after having 5 children, and some of them in uni, she went to uni.
Oh, lovely.
She decided to pursue a bachelor degree in education. So she was, when I was little, I will go to my mother's town, and if I go out with my grandmother, people will tell me, your grandmother taught me how to read.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Even one of my cousins, she married one of my grandmother's students. I mean, later in life, when it was like, I know your grandmother. She used to be my teacher.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty funny story. But yeah, and then she was a teacher, and then my mother, I think the challenges, even when my family, they were poor, you know. My mother grew up in a house at a certain point. The floor in the kitchen was like soil. You know, they have a latrine outside, that kind. You know, she has one pair of shoes. They became two pairs of shoes when they were too small for them, and they will cut the back part of it, and then there were sandals. So that's the way my mom grew up. So she made a lot of progression, you know. Having a university degree for my mom opened her the opportunity to move from the east part of the island to the metropolitan area, and then get a degree. And then she was able to live there, and then from being very poor to start as lower middle class. So it was a step up.
Social
right?
mobility.
Yes. But my mom, my mom went to uni in 1962. She was very young. She was 16 years old, because kids tend to go in Puerto Rico quite early to school, because it was one less mouth to feed. Because then the school will feed them. Okay. So in that term, also my mom, she didn't have that much opportunity, even my grandmother, to choose what profession they would like to develop or occupation, because based on the social constructions at the time in Puerto Rico, she had a couple of opportunities. She can become a nurse, she can become a teacher, or a social worker if she wants to be a professional. The other professions were visualized and occupied by men, right? So that was the challenge for her. Yes, she was able to go to uni, but basically she had three choices.
Yeah, but it's interesting, these many layers you're talking about, because, for example, when I do my study on women first generation, you see so many overlaps with international students as well, and mature students like ourselves, because, you know, this is the beauty of the intersectionality of things. It's like, it's not one or another, a binary situation. We have many, you know, issues overlapping. And one of my questions is about your experiences as a mature and parent student like myself. How is navigating higher education back to university to do your PhD later in life?
I think the first things comes to mind is like the places that you cannot visit with your children, because it's just for adults, even when it's a place for learning. In my country, it was different. In Puerto Rico, when I had my son in 2006, we lived there up to 2007, I was able to go to some classes with my child and my husband as well.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was very different here. And here I started uni in 2020. You know, you might feel it's like some progress, but no. And I understand how children behave. I understand that, and why each person has their own place. But even yes, in terms of the, you know, dynamics need to change, right? Because before I was at home with my children, I used to homeschool them. And eventually my son went to school, and then I kept homeschooling my daughter. So that transition of just handling time, because my first 2 years of PhD, I was homeschooling as well, full time. So that was challenging. What helped me was the pandemic, because most of the things were online. So I was able to leave her working things while I was doing like the online seminars and things like that. But in terms of like your time with your family, when you're a person driven by your family, I felt at a certain point guilty of taking time from my family to do a PhD, for example. The financial, you know, difficulties that I put in my family through, because then we have one salary instead of two, right? Because even when I was homeschooling my children, I was a freelance teacher, and I was teaching Spanish and drama. So we have an income. So that was a big impact in terms of that. So yes, sleep deprived again, not having a baby but you have a PhD now.
Yeah.
So I think that big impact is the financial part of it, and time, quality time with the family. Those are the two things I've been sacrificing. For example, I feel happy to cook for my family. I am a creative person, so I like to create recipes and feed them. And what do you think about this? And I have to give up that, because then my husband was the one cooking all the time, right? So what I will do is for the Christmas holiday, that I'll cook. Everything that I didn't cook through the year, I will do in the Christmas holiday. So now that I submitted my dissertation, I've been cooking more at home. I've been more creative around the kitchen, and I think that brought back some joy in terms of connection with my family.
How do you think pursuing your PhD affected your family? Did they ever mention anything of you being busy, or maybe the change of lifestyle from homeschooling to going to a...
I think it was the right time, because my daughter was in the right social development time to want to go to school. I mean, she has her friends from homeschool, and she still meet them and share with them, but there was a reduced amount of people compared to a school of 700 children,
Yes.
something like that. So I think she was ready. Also, she was ready to not. She knew who she was at that time, so she would not get bothered if people will tell her something about being homeschooled and going to school, because you get that sometimes, in social environments. But I have never heard any complaints about doing the PhD. I mean, it's a certain point that you just want to be done, because also you want to provide financially for your family, and you feel that pressure, right? And I think it's an imposed pressure as well.
Yes, no, it's interesting you mentioned the guilt, because obviously I think most mothers and women can relate, even if you're not a mother, guilt for being away. And I think it has a lot to do with the work of care we do, and you were listing some of them, which I find interesting. Like, if you could think about all the unpaid work you have been doing your life, either with your children, but even voluntary work, which is also a form of care, isn't it? Caring for the community and all those things you do, do you have an idea? Can you list, all the unpaid work you've been doing so far? Just,
And that was one of the reasons that I decided to pursue a PhD. It was, I've been, when you're in a profession as an educator, when you're a parent, you're taking care of other people. So it was a certain point of my life that I was like, I want to do something for myself. I would like to have the opportunity to read something and just lay down and get into my thoughts and make connection with this information and create something. Right? So I just was craving that at that moment in my life. And also because the same as well, then you get to positions within your profession, or where you exercises at the time, that you are on the top of the game, but you're not being remunerated.
Yeah, so we were talking about motherhood and pursuing higher education. How was it navigating higher education later in life and being a parent?
Yes, it was very interesting. I mean, I came back to uni because I have a master's degree that I did 10 years before starting a PhD. So 10 years after, and 2 children later, because when I was doing my master, my son was 2 years old, right? So it was more work, of course. Also the way, my brain at the time, when I was doing my master, I was in a program that is our summer program for teachers. So I had the opportunity that my son will stay with my husband, with his dad, while I was studying in another state of the US. So I was focused on what I was doing for those months, right? I will come and go and visit them. But then be a full-time PhD student with 2 children, it was a challenge of how to distribute my time, you know, like I felt like at sometimes that being the role of the mother and the PhD student was not able to integrate. They were separated, right? And there was two universe clashing. You know, sometimes if something was happening at home, even if my children were asking something to their dad, I feel the urge to help them or say something because I used to be the person in that role full time for them. It was easier for me to be a mom, you know, because I was doing that role for 10 years. Also, like, because going back to uni higher education, my master was a practical master. You have different pathways, and I decided to create a curriculum and develop it with my preschool students at the time. Here, it was pure research and developing a dissertation. So in that sense, it was a new experience for me to learn how to develop those skills, to be able to get into a lit review, into learn these new skills. It was different from writing grants for charity. It was very different from, you know, developing a whole, project and to see beyond the horizon, you know, because when you're a researcher, you need to visualize your future to be able to apply for the next step in your life as well. So I tell people, for me, it was more difficult to become a researcher than to be a mother. Even I joke with people saying like I gained more weight during my PhD than in my pregnancies. Even that, you know, as frivolous as my sound. But I think coming to higher education, comparing, for example, maternity, because maternity can challenge your mental health. You know, since you're pregnant, the changes of hormones, giving birth, that postpartum depression that may you suffer, right? Or maybe you don't drop into postpartum depression, but you might feel some moments of sadness. Compared to the PhD journey, that it was very challenging. You have to learn very quickly certain skills. There's also this sense of competition. So you're building community, networking, but you're competing with these people as well. So I think my mental health was highly challenged during my PhD journey. And when younger students, meaning not younger necessarily in age, but younger in the career, they ask me, what is your advice for someone who's starting the career as a PhD student, grad student? I was like, build up your mental health and your well-being. Don't wait until you're in your dissertation stage that you could be isolated writing and that they're very challenging. Start doing things now, meditation. Be socially, sharing with other people. Things that will build up your mental health, that you have some reserve when times become really challenging.
Yeah, no, this is a good one. Good one. And what about the most memorable moments you had here at Cambridge? Because it can be also a pretty fantastic experience.
I don't know, right? I mean, my matriculation is like when they initiate you in the university. It was during the pandemic. So we have all our masks, and I bought online one with the name of my college, to be ready for photos, for pictures. So it was interesting because we were all keeping 6 feet distance. We don't have a professional photographer, was passing your phone to each other to take photos. And I remember I have these red stilettos that I wear in special occasions, and I have those, and I can barely walk. But I felt that was the proper, footwear to have that day. To start University of Cambridge. And I remember the president of the college saying, like, now, because you signed a book starting in this university as a student, and they will put it, in the library, and your name will be the same place that the names of very important people have been studying here in Cambridge, and you become part of that community. And meaning like I never thought in my life to be part of this community. You know, for me, Cambridge was a dictionary, literally. Like when we get, like back home in Puerto Rico when I was little, it was the Oxford English to English Dictionary and Cambridge. And Cambridge, you will have my textbooks about science, math, things like that, right? It was more like a publisher. It was not like a university and a place to come to study. It was not in my radar. So I learned about the University of Cambridge when I moved to this country. Like that was like, so I never, you know, and going to a really prestigious university when I come from, I didn't know anyone coming to this university. You know, I grew up with a single mother raising 3 daughters, you know, and all the challenges, the sacrifices a single mom like needs to do to raise children, and you know, studying out of your country, financially impossible, right? So is how you, I think it's just how you pursue opportunities, how you can see, maybe you see a door and it's not open, but you can question yourself, you can find the key, or if it opens a little bit, how you can get there. So I think that we just move from opportunity through opportunity. And when I applied for a PhD, I remember I told a colleague, I told her, I'm bored. Yeah, I love the job that I'm doing, but I'm starting to feel bored. I want more. And I thought about it. I always feel like, what about a PhD? And I remember this professor from the University of Cambridge, but I knew him from my community work. That I was from the Spanish school, I was collaborating with the university, right? And I remember I told him when I met him to collaborate, I told him, I always like toy with the idea of doing a PhD, but I'm not sure. And he told me this, you just need one person that believes in you, and that's gonna be good enough. Oh. It was like an epiphany for me, right? And that person is my current advisor.
Oh, this is wonderful.
And so that is Yongshan Liu he's an applied linguistics professor at the Faculty of Education. So I will always be like grateful for that advice. And then I thought about it. And when I applied for my PhD program, I was very bold to this decision. And I said, Oxford or Cambridge? Coming from, you know, a master's in practice. And my husband told me like, you know, I work in Cambridge, moving to Oxford is gonna be challenging, you know. And I was like, what about if I commute? He's like, I think it's gonna get expensive, think about it, you know. And then I was like, okay. So I just applied to the University of Cambridge, only to the University of Cambridge, because I was like, if destiny is on my side, I will do that. And my plan B, it was like, if I don't get the PhD, I will do something else. I will find another kind of job, or put together my own business. But I really felt this need of getting myself into exercise my intellect, but also put it into practice as well. And yes, when I got the letter, like the offer letter because they do it through a college here, I was like, oh, holy cannoli. I started crying, and my husband, are you so happy that you're gonna know? I'm afraid. Now I have to do it. So that's, you know, and this place in Cambridge in general is a place full of charm. You know, now we are here more in the green fields in the next village in Grantchester, but when you go to city center in Cambridge, then you have all these buildings for the 13th century. I mean, I'm in a university, I will graduate from university that it was put together by rebels of Oxford, right? In the 13th century. So I'm proud of that, you know, of that history of Cambridge, right? So I enjoy that. I mean, having the formals, the way is when you are among students, the relationship that we develop as well. I mean, when I have the opportunity to touch base with you every Tuesday, right?
Yes.
So that's for me right now, the idea of, so my idea of formal has been changing, because before I experienced that from a professional coming out of the university to be at formals and network. Now as a student, it's more like a connection with colleagues, or
Yes.
like student to student, like, how was this week with you? And we just vent, recharge, and keep going.
Yes.
It's more like a support system.
It's very special that we go to this women's only college, which is one of the few remaining in Cambridge. They're more and more becoming mixed. So I do feel like it's quite a safe space for us to have those conversations and, kind of facing similar barriers and oppressions in education and in life. So you do find like-minded people a lot, I think, when you are in a college like this. Yeah, you mentioned some of these people, but if you can think about others who were not academic, not scholars, who were very supportive and share those moments with you during higher education, like for sure your husband and children who are here in Cambridge with you, but also who else?
I mean,
from the non-academic community.
Yeah. I mean, as I mentioned before, from the heritage language community, they were super supportive. Even my people, they were saying, oh, what are you doing now? Oh, I'm doing a PhD. Oh my gosh, it's like one of them made it, kind of thing. Like, keep going, how are you doing? And they will encourage me when they see me to keep going, and also from the charity sector as well. I remember from one of the charities that I was a dance instructor and a drama instructor. When I was about to start, they asked me, so Heidi, how do you feel about starting in Cambridge? And I was like, I will bring the funk into Cambridge University. That was my answer. But I treasure a lot of people from the charity sector in Cambridge who were supportive, that they were open to my ideas, how to build community and find resources. I really enjoy how to make connections. So I was always trying to link the community language schools with these, charities supporting education or minority ethnics here. So I think the reason I got to a PhD is thank you to the community language schools and the charities here. It's like, I admire from this place is like, and in this country the tradition of charities is like, we might lack certain things that the government is not providing us, but we as a community come together and we provide for ourselves.
Yeah.
So that sense of overcoming adversity and exercising resilience, I admire it. I highly admire from this country and its people.
Yeah, no, I always saw in you this sense of purpose that I think, there are so many downsides of being a mature parent-student, but I think having a sense of purpose and doing a meaningful work is something we can say we do, because it's not easy to be back at university. And I usually say that I feel like it's kind of an eternal, never-ending catching up with things. And you mentioned the costs and time in those decisions in relation to education, and I always feel like we as women are always kind of catching up and late for things, like other people, again, bringing the overlaps and everything, but we're not following the traditional path in education. Like I see people sometimes, younger scholars, like making fun of people in their 30s, and I'm on my 40s, back to university, saying things like, oh, they should be retired or things like that. And I think, wow, it is hard when you are like not as everybody else and an exception to the rule. And Cambridge definitely, I don't see us as the typical Cambridge scholars. But on the other hand, like you say, we are the ones who made it, and it's so special because we hear, other people inspired by our stories or supporting us, even people we don't know is just following us on social media for some reason. So what do you think a Cambridge degree will open for you in terms of opportunities, but also, you said it's different from other universities, it is special and it is recognized as well, it's perceived as something different and special. So what are your expectations on having a Cambridge degree?
I mean, one of the reasons I thought having a PhD at University of Cambridge was a good idea is because how people perceive a degree from University of Cambridge. They perceive it as an international credential based on my research that you see these teachers going to other countries with their degrees in different aspects of their lives, different professions, and they have not validated because, oh, you come from Hungary or you come from South America. So now with the University of Cambridge degree, now you cannot say I have a regional credential. Now I'm giving you an international credential. So that was, it was what I suffered, is what my participants also experience. So that's one of the reasons I really would like that this degree will give me, right? And also I believe that now with the privilege I have, being a student and an alumni now from the University of Cambridge, I think I would like to open doors for other people. I would like to make connection with my country and the community that I will end up living, to open doors for them, because it's the same that I did for here in Cambridge. When I have colleagues that learn I was doing a PhD in Cambridge, they ask me, I would like to do a master, what do I have to do? And I invited them to the faculty, come, let's have some hot chocolate together. I will show them around to make them that, yes, it's possible. You just need the key information that I didn't have, right? So yes, I would like that the degree allow me to keep using my privilege to open doors for other people that have never dreamed in their lives to be part of this community.
Nice. And do you think, if you think of the trajectory of women in your life, like you mentioned your mom being a single mom and being a mature student like yourself, and you have a daughter as well, what do you think are the things that the women in your family kind of carry on in different generations, like have in common, and also what you differ from your mother? What do you think is different from your generation to your mother, and what are your expectations on your children's generation after the experience? You mentioned your mom experiences a bit of upward social mobility by being able to have a degree later in life. Now you have a Cambridge degree. What do you see for in the future? How, if you could tell the future?
No, part of since I decided to go to the US to pursue a master, I knew I will change my children's trajectory. I know they will be a step above me, So even in my research, I mentioned that we decided to go out of our country and pursue, higher education degrees to give a better future for our children. So mainly for that, I hope that helped my trajectory as well, right? And I admire so many people that they start from the bottom and keep progressing. My own mother, she was so poor, and eventually she was able to step up within her social economical class. And that's because then she was able then to send us to better schools that she went. Right? She was able to live in a town next to the university that we were able to go, right? So I think my trajectory is better thanks to my grandmother, even thanks to my grandfather, because he was the one encouraging my grandmother, go pursue university. And he was working with cows and cattle, right? But, something that is very clear within my family, even from my mother's side and my father's side, is the men dedicating themselves to work in occupations because they knew it was more difficult for the females to find a place within the world and develop themselves. So from my dad's side, is what I heard from my family is my dad and his brother, they worked, and all their sisters, they're professionals because they needed to give something for them, so they be a step above them in the sense of progression, change their trajectory, because they knew it's going to be more difficult for them. And from my mother's side as well. So I think what helps me also about how, not necessarily how the University of Cambridge changed my trajectory, is this spirit from the women of my family that if you want something, you go for it. What do you need to go and get that? And maybe now is not the right time. You have to wait a little bit, but how you get there and feel the world and moving around. This is the third country I've been living, so I see the world smaller than before when I was living in Puerto Rico. And I loved, to move around, meet new people, and have new experiences. So I think that helps as well to find new ways to. I think most of my trajectory beyond academia, the way I do things is to find joy.
Yeah.
And 2020, finding joy was to pursue a PhD. Now finding joy is finding a job to use that Cambridge degree.
Yeah, no, it is a way of fighting back. I think finding joy is something that it is like a way of fighting back, something that, that is mostly denied to us, especially as women, mature parents, students in higher education. And it's interesting you mentioned that, being in a place with so many other big names, people that inspired us throughout the centuries, like you mentioned being, in a very old university. And we are here in Cambridge, actually Grantchester, near Cambridge, in those beautiful meadows, where very inspiring people like Virginia Woolf and John Maynard Keynes and Rupert Brooke and Bertrand Russell, who are people who I admire. They used to meet up in this area before the First World War. And again, I think it's very special that this first episode of the podcast is being here with you as well, as such a special friends. And how do you want us to end up this podcast? Do you have anything you want to say? Or
I have something to share. I think you don't know this about me. I haven't never mentioned before, because the first time I exercised as an accidental teacher, it was when I became a preschool teacher. Because when I was studying education, I studied education for secondary school. I was like running away for the little children. But then life brought me to be a preschool teacher in the US. And I developed a taste for children's literature. And when I left my first job in the US, to be a mom, because I was pregnant with my daughter and I was very sick, so I needed to leave my job. My supervisor at the time, she gave me this book. I was going to show it here. It says All the Places You'll Go, from Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss is like the royal doll of the US, right? And since then, I've been collecting children's book, and they even had a message for me and everything, and signed up by all my colleagues there. And I have books that are just mine. It's not my children. People might think it's my children's book when they were little. No, they're my books. And the second job, I think the job I had before coming here, it was in a school in the US, and they also gave me a book about about hats, because I love hats. So I just trying to find here a good quote, because this book is about that. Doesn't matter where you go, you will always find a way because you have places to go. So it's basically talking about that, and it tells so here, let me see if I find a good one. Here's by the end. It says, and will you succeed? Yes, you will indeed. 98 and 3/4% guaranteed. Kid, you'll move mountains. So it was this inspirational way to wish me good luck to go away to the next step in my life. And yes, after I left that job, I had my daughter, then I had another job. I didn't go back because then I was trying to be a preschool teacher. After preschool teacher, I was a primary school teacher. And here, the second thing I have, and I promise this is the last one.
No,
so I have this little book. As you see, it's so little. So when I went to Glasgow last year, they got me in Glasgow to be a keynote poet at a conference there. So meaning that I needed to be a whole day observing everything, listen to all the presentations, being all the workshops, and then I need to come up with a poem by the end of it. And then I performed that poem there. And the connection with this little book is that the day that I had off, I went to a nearby museum there because I love museums, and I found this little book. And I was like, I love this book, but what can I do with this journal? I have a lot of journals. So I'm gonna make a mini poems collection. So here I'm developing my mini poems collection that I wish to publish this. And
You presented your poem in the UN, right?
So this one, it was the UNESCO RILA, so it's the UNESCO Chair for Refugees Integration through Languages and the Arts, and they're based in Glasgow, the University of Glasgow. And one of the nights they have like an open mic. In Brazil, like a sarau kind of thing in one of the art centers there in Glasgow, and then I was able to read one of my poems there. But this one is this is the first one, and it says, being small as the pure expressiveness of greatness, small at glance, large at heart. And that's it, because it's a small poem.
It is,
so
yes.
it is. So that's it. Keeps going, and then after that, I decided that I'm going to have that. We like to have them bilingual. So one page will be in English and the other one in Spanish, and so on. So, and you might have, I like to play with words and creativity. So you might have a poem that is raining a poem. You see the clouds raining.
Yes.
Words. So yeah.
Oh,
That's
is
me.
beautiful. Thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
the time and for sharing all those beautiful stories. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Ah,
Obrigada.
prazer.